and welcome to Introduction to Corporate Giving. Very excited to be offering this session for you today. This will be a very introductory overview to the whole concept of corporate philanthropy. So if anyone here has past experience with corporate philanthropy, there is a possibility that this might be a little bit rudimentary for you. But if anyone is brand new to corporate giving, then this is the place to be, I guarantee it. Briefly, a little bit about Candid and who we are and what we do and what we're all about. Candid is a nonprofit organization made up of two long-standing legacy organizations, which are Foundation Center and GuideStar. Foundation Center has been around for a long time, since 1956, and since that time, it has been the #1 source of information, research, and data on foundations and grant making and philanthropy worldwide. Whereas GuideStar has been around since the early 90s, and it is the #1 source of data on the nonprofit sector. And about 4 years ago, Foundation Center and GuideStar joined together and became one organization. We changed our name and we're now known as Candid. What we're all about is the fact that every year, millions of nonprofits spend trillions of dollars around the world. Our job is to find out, where does that money come from? Where does that money go? And why does it matter? We connect people who want to change the world to the resources that they need to do it. So leading today's session, there's me. My name is Tracy. I am Network Engagement Manager here at Candid. I've been here for the past 15 years and do a lot of our professional development workshops here. I'm based out of New York City. So you're going to be hearing a lot out of me for the next 60 minutes. Also, my colleague Erin, who is also based out of New York, is joining today, and she will be helping out with a lot of the Q&A and posting links in the chat and whatnot. And we're both really happy to have you all here with us today. Also, I'm very happy to welcome our co-hosts today for our webinar on corporate giving, which is COACT Detroit. We have Trish DeWald and Asteria Rogan on the line here. So COACT Detroit is part of Candid Community, one of the many partners that Candid has all around the country, who helps provide access to resources for nonprofit organizations in their area. Trish and Asteria, would you both like to come on the line and share a little bit about the resources that can be accessed through COACT Detroit?
Sure. My name is Asteria Rogan. Trish actually will be joining us a little later. She is currently in a meeting here in the office, so she has to present, so she'll be in a little later. But I am Asteria Rogan, and I am the executive assistant here at COACT Detroit. COACT Detroit is a resource hub for nonprofits and community organizations in Southeast Michigan. We're located in the city of Detroit, in the new center area of Detroit. We exist to support nonprofits and the community organizations so that they can better serve their communities and make an impact, and make the impact they're looking to make. We do this through various programming, trainings, and supporting with administering grants as well. To learn more about COACT Detroit, you can go to our website, which is coactdetroit.org. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Asteria, for sharing a little bit about COACT Detroit. And with that, let's jump into Introduction to Corporate Giving. So basically, what we're discussing today, we're going to go over how companies give, why companies give, and overall how to find corporate partners. So there's really 3 different areas to what we're covering in our session today. So when it comes to how companies give, we're going to explore the different options that are available for getting corporate support, whether we're talking about cash or non-cash support. And in some ways, the really beautiful thing about corporate giving is that it provides so many different possibilities. There are a lot of different entry points to getting into corporate giving. And I think that's kind of its strongest asset compared to other types of giving that your organization might be exploring. And then we're going to talk about motivations for giving. Because while many corporations do give for philanthropic reasons, they have other motivations as well. And we'll talk about what those are and what companies are looking for from nonprofit organizations. And when it comes to how to find corporate partners, with traditional foundations, you submit an application for a proposal and either it's accepted or it's not. But with companies, there are many avenues you can go down, and there are many ways that you can develop relationships. So we're going to be looking at a tool for researching potential corporate partners. We're going to go into Candid's database, the foundation directory, and show you exactly how to use it specifically for isolating corporate funders as opposed to other types of funders. So with that, let's jump into how companies give. So before we can talk about the motivations behind corporate giving and why a company might be interested in partnering with your nonprofit, let's take a quick look at how companies support nonprofits. So you're looking at a pie chart here. This is research that comes from chief executives for corporate purpose. I think that's what CECP stands for right now. They used to have their acronym used to stand for something slightly different, but they reframed it in the last couple of years or so. But anyway, as you can see from this graph, corporations contribute to nonprofits both monetarily and by other means. And the data is showing that corporate giving primarily falls into the form of cash contributions at currently about 82% here, with 18% coming in the form of non-cash contributions. And we'll talk about non-cash contributions in a short while and what we mean by that. But first, let's take a closer look at the cash side here. So in some ways, this starts out looking incredibly simple of how corporate giving works. It sounds like the strongest chance is you're getting some sort of money from them, and there's a slightly lesser chance that you will be getting something other than money from a company. But if you want to take a closer look at this, that 82% cash piece should really be split into two other pieces that you'll see here. So if you take a look, you'll see that we have direct cash and we have foundation cash. So foundation cash versus direct cash here. If we were doing this class 10 years ago, actually, this would be switched around the other way, and you would see roughly half of the money going from corporations coming from corporate foundations, and about a third of the money would be direct cash. But this is a very dynamic, ever-changing field here, and so they've kind of swapped here. So nearly half of the money that's coming from corporations is coming through what we call direct cash, and I'll explain exactly what that means in a second, but about a third is coming from what we call company-sponsored foundations. This is helpful to know because, like I mentioned a second ago, corporations can contribute to nonprofits in a lot of different ways. Unlike traditional foundations, which usually only have one mechanism for submitting requests, a company may have many vehicles for support. So this means that if one door closes, there might be another door to try. So again, this is one of the nice things about corporate support, is that there are options available. So let's take a look here at different types of cash contributions that we might have coming in. So cash contributions can come in the form of foundation grants, corporate contributions, sponsorships, cause-related marketing, and matching gifts through employees. That's 5 different forms that financial support from a corporation could take. So we're starting to dive deeper into the different options that you have available here. So first, let's cover foundation grants. So some companies choose to make their contributions through organized philanthropy. meaning they choose to set up a grant-making foundation to distribute grant funds. So company-sponsored foundations are also referred to as corporate foundations. And these are private foundations, the same as any other private grant-making foundation, whose grant funds are derived from the contributions of a for-profit business. So because this is a foundation, this is not money coming directly from the company itself. This means that while a company-sponsored foundation may retain close ties with the donor company, it is still an independent organization of its own. The corporate foundation has its own endowment separate from the for-profit company, and it has its own board of directors separate from the for-profit company, and the corporate foundation is subject to the same rules and regulations as any private foundation. So that's an important thing to know, because the good news is that foundations, including corporate foundations, they have to give money away. Foundations are nonprofit organizations just like you are, and they are required by law to give out money to charitable organizations for charitable purposes. They're required by the IRS to give away at least 5% of the prior year's assets. So this is nice because this means that there is a source of stability here when it comes to a source of support for you. Whereas other forms of corporate giving may be a little more touch and go depending on the economic climate. Because foundations have to give out 5% of their assets every year, no matter what, it means if they're not giving it to you, they're giving it to someone else. So why not have them be giving it to you? It's really nice to have that form of stability of money that has to go to nonprofits. So a foundation is kind of in contrast to corporate contributions here. So if you remember when we were looking at that pie chart, the section that said direct cash, that is corporate contributions, aka corporate giving programs. So there are many companies that have both a foundation and a direct corporate giving program. A corporate giving program is a grant-making program that's established and administered within the profit-making company. So unlike corporate foundations, these corporate contributions are not a separate entity from the corporation. They're baked into the company itself, which means that their annual funding totals are directly related to the company's current profits. Basically, when a company has its own corporate foundation, it's its own separate beast. It's a separate entity. It's technically a nonprofit. It's subject to all the same transparency rules as any nonprofit, all the same giving requirements as any grant-making foundation, etc. And so they are required to give out that certain amount of money compared to these direct corporate giving programs that can have a lot more flexibility on what they do and do not do. They have a lot more freedom in a lot of ways. So if you remember the pie chart, there's about a third of a chance that what you are getting is coming from a corporate foundation, whereas about half of the money that's coming in is going to be from one of these corporate giving programs, which are the ones that are baked into the company itself, and they have a lot more flexibility on their giving, and they don't have the same requirements necessarily to give away a certain amount every single year. There are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, they do what they want to do. So those are two different options for getting financial support from a company. And then we've got corporate sponsorships, and that is an entirely different beast. So a corporate sponsorship is a payment by a business to a nonprofit that is generally recognized by the nonprofit with an acknowledgement that the business has supported the nonprofit's activities or its programs or an event. Events are especially well known for getting corporate sponsors. You've probably seen this all the time. A successful corporate sponsorship benefits both the nonprofit and its sponsor. So a corporate sponsorship is different. Like a grant from a foundation or from a corporate giving program is a little bit more straightforwardly a gift, but a corporate sponsorship is all about being mutually beneficial. If a company wants to sponsor you, they want to know very clearly what it is that they are going to get out of it. So maybe think for an event, for instance, why might a company be interested in sponsoring an event? So basically, events will usually attract large groups of people, and that brings a lot of visibility to the company. So a company may choose to sponsor an event so that they can get their name and their brand in front of a lot of people. That's what's going on when we're talking corporate sponsorship. And we'll discuss that a little bit more when we talk about company motivations, about why they give. But also keep in mind that when we think of corporate sponsorships, we most often think of events, but companies can sponsor other things too. They can sponsor any type of program you might be offering that could have some sort of visibility that would be helpful for them. Like if you're running a program that, I don't know, benefits students, benefits children that are participating in this. And if there's enough people participating in this program that it would act almost like a bit of advertising for the company, for them to sponsor this program and have their name be mentioned alongside the name of this program that's serving like children and youth, for instance, then it would be worth their while to consider that sponsorship. These sponsorships, they can be large, they can be small, anywhere in between. Like there's always a logic behind which sponsors and which nonprofits get paired together. I'm thinking, like, as an example, I live in Brooklyn, New York, and in Brooklyn, the big park that we have here is Prospect Park. And every summer, Brick Arts Media, which is a nonprofit here, they put on a huge free concert series outdoors in the park all summer long. And they get all kinds of like pretty well-known musical acts to perform. And these are all basically free to the public. But they have a lot of corporate sponsors. You'll see like, I don't know, Bud Light will oftentimes be a sponsor, which means that they are providing their beverages at the event. And so they're getting a little bit of advertising as people are getting to sample the products there. I've also seen oftentimes IKEA has sponsored them before. And there's also a very large like IKEA location here in Brooklyn, so that as you're enjoying the concert, you could be thinking, yeah, I actually do need a new couch. Maybe I'll stop by IKEA tomorrow. I've seen Lyft act as a sponsor for them before. By the time these concerts are over, it's maybe 10 o'clock at night or something, and maybe people are too tired to walk or take the subway home, and they decide, we'll get a Lyft to go home. There's always like a logic behind who are the sponsors that are paired with these types of events. So it's another good thing to kind of think of here. And then we have cause-related marketing. That is yet another form of financial support that corporations partake in. Cause-related marketing is a jargony enough term that people don't always know what it is just based on the phrase, but I guarantee you've seen it in action a million times. So some companies may choose to engage in cause-related marketing as their form of doing corporate support. This is another one of those mutually beneficial partnerships between the corporation and the nonprofit. In this type of partnership in cause-related marketing, the company will donate to the nonprofit whenever their product is purchased. So like if you've ever been at a store where you pick up an item off the shelf and that item has, say, a nonprofit's logo on it, and it'll say something about Like, oh, for every one of these products that's purchased, a portion of the proceeds will go to support like the such and such organization. I guarantee you've seen this millions of times. So American Express, I believe, was the first company to use the phrase cause-related marketing back in 1983 to describe its campaign to raise money for the Statue of Liberty's restoration. And as part of this campaign, American Express donated 1 cent to the Statue of Liberty's restoration every time someone used its credit card. So as a result of this campaign, the restoration of the Statue of Liberty got a lot of money, but also American Express found its number of new cardholders grew by 45% during this cause-related marketing campaign, and usage of Amex cards increased by 28% during the campaign. So this is where the mutually beneficial piece comes from here, because people are more likely to want to use a product if they think that they can help support a good cause at the same time. So it's good for the nonprofit, but it's also really good for business. Companies do this a lot because it's good for business. So that is kind of like a high profile example of cause-related marketing. So sometimes if someone hears like, oh, American Express and Statue of Liberty, we're not as big as all that. But cause-related marketing is another thing that can take place on any scale, whether large, small, or in between. So like for a smaller scale example of cause-related marketing. So let's say we are organizing a youth baseball team in our town. And let's say this youth baseball team partners with a local ice cream shop on a specific night of the week, which means that every time someone buys an ice cream cone on, say, Tuesday nights, a percentage of the proceeds go to the baseball team. And so what happens is the team encourages their friends and family to come out to the ice cream shop on Tuesday nights to support the team. And this means that the team benefits from the support financially of the ice cream shop, but the ice cream shop also benefits from the increased sales and visibility. Maybe Tuesday nights are normally slow nights, but now there's this influx of people coming in because they want to support the baseball team. And so they make money and the baseball team makes money. It's win-win. That's how this works. And then finally, we have matching gifts through employees. So employee matching gifts, also known as matching funds, are grants that an employer makes to match its employees' charitable contributions. And typically, these matching gifts are going to be dollar for dollar, but some companies will give double or even triple the original donation. Some companies might also give matching gifts for employees' volunteer efforts. And procedures will often vary with each company. Typically, people have to submit forms to their employers through like the HR department. It's important to be aware of what companies offer these matching gifts and to use your contacts and your connections accordingly. So like if you use Candid's database, the foundation directory, they will tell you when you look up a company of like, do they have a matching gift policy, employee matching gifts, etc. But also think about people you know. Think about who you know that works for, say, a big corporation that might possibly have a matching gift program. Because like with all of these different options you have available, we've just gone through 5 different options so far and we're not even done here. Some of these might be more successful for you than others. Like maybe let's say you submit an application for a grant through a company's corporate foundation. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Maybe they say no. Maybe then you try through their corporate giving program and maybe that'll work, maybe it won't work. Maybe you're trying to make a case for a corporate sponsorship or cause-related marketing campaign or something like that. If all of those efforts fail, but you know someone, you have a good friend who works full-time at that company and they have a matching gift program, that can help open the door so that you can squeeze your way in. So let's say, I don't know, you have a friend who works at the Gap, and you can convince them to make like a $100 donation to your program and use their corporate matching program as part of this. So they fill out whatever forms in the HR department, and then that means that the Gap, as in the whole company itself, also kicks in $100. So on the one hand, now you have $200 that you didn't used to have, and that's nice. But also now you can say that you got a corporate donation from the Gap, and you are not lying. It's true and it happened. So this is both helpful when it comes to fundraising from other sources, like say from other foundations or companies or what have you. When it comes to showing like diversified funding streams, you're able to show that you have money coming in from a variety of locations. But it also means you just got a little tiny foot in the door with the Gap, or whatever for-profit company you're trying this with, which means you can later reach out to them and thank them for the support that they gave you through their employee matching gift program, and try to leverage that to build the relationship into even bigger things, so that maybe next year you have a stronger chance at getting a grant through their foundation or their corporate giving program or what have you. Because it's also good to know that like a lot of the biggest companies have both a foundation and a corporate giving program. And it's a real nice thing having those kinds of options, because it means if one thing doesn't work out, sometimes another thing will. All right, so that is our cash contributions. Now, let's take a breath and talk about non-cash contributions. Okay, so non-cash contributions are just like they sound. They're a contribution from a company that is not monetary. These are also often called an in-kind contribution. So these will often take the form of products or pro bono services or employee volunteerism or space donations. So let's talk about each of these in just a touch more detail. First, we have donations of products. This is one of your types of in-kind contributions. Product donations are important because a lot of relationships can start here with the donation of a product from a company before. So there are some good resources for finding product donations. There's a website called Good 360 that can be a pretty good resource for nonprofits that are looking for product donations, because it can help match companies who have inventory and products to give with nonprofits who need them. There's also, again, the foundation directory. You can look up who is able to provide product donations, and they'll be able to share that kind of stuff with you. So definitely feel free to use the resources at your disposal for this kind of thing. Let me actually pause for just a second, because I think we may have some questions coming in here. Okay, I see a couple of questions based on that first section about the different types of corporate giving out there. I see a question about foundations are nonprofits. Are they 501c3s? Yes, yes, they are. Foundations are just another type of nonprofit organization. So if you think about all of the rules that govern you as a nonprofit, very similar rules govern a corporate foundation. So if you see that a company has a corporate foundation, then for instance, like you have to file the Form 990 every year as your tax return, and they're public documents that anyone can look at any day of the week. Same thing goes for a corporate foundation. You can look at a corporate foundation's tax returns on the internet because they are nonprofits exactly like you. And I see a related question right below. to confirm, does a corporate giving program, are they required to give 5% of their assets each year? The answer is no. A corporate giving program is not a foundation. They give money, but they are not a foundation. They're a different type of vehicle. They are not required to give 5% every year. They are much more flexible. So that's why we talk about them as two very, very different things. Okay, let's keep going here. So we've got our product donations. So these are also known as in-kind donations. And I can briefly show you in our database, like how do you find this kind of stuff, so that you can figure out which companies do this and which companies don't. But we also have pro bono services and employee volunteerism. So this is a type of giving also that is not directly financial. Some companies also choose to support nonprofits by volunteering their employees and/or those employees' expertise. Employee volunteerism can sometimes come in the form of volunteers for an event. So some really huge corporations will offer a day of service where instead of going to work, employees are instead paid to go out and volunteer in the community. Companies can also donate their expertise and provide like very skilled volunteerism, like legal or tax or business advice, marketing support, website development, strategic planning, etc. They might also encourage their employees to serve on the board of local nonprofits. But I will say, like, you might think that getting corporate volunteers is less good than getting, say, a donation of money from a corporation. But at the same time, employee volunteerism, it's a great way in with a company. This is another one of those things, much like the matching gift programs, that's a really good way to get your foot in the door if ultimately you want to eventually get like a grant. So if there is an employee like volunteering day, and suddenly there's all these corporate volunteers that flood into your organization to help out for the day. Like, these things can be kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes it's actually helpful for you on that day, and sometimes it's like anarchy. It's all of these people, untrained people, just flooded in the door and they're supposedly helping us, but it's hard work trying to manage volunteers. But if you really think about it, you just brought in a whole bunch of gainfully employed people into your organization's space for the day. And if you think about how hard it can sometimes be to get like a funder or a major donor or something like that to come by and see your programs in action and get excited about what you do, you just got a whole ton of potential donors in the door of your organization volunteering with you for the day to see your programs in action. So if you manage to give even just a few of those people a really positive experience that day, first of all, they might go back to work and talk to kind of the powers that be at the company about how fantastic your nonprofit is and how like they should give you a grant. Also, some of those corporate volunteers might become donors themselves to you. It might contribute. You might get yourself a new board member, which is always a really helpful and valuable thing. So corporate volunteers can be really, really terrific in this way as well. And then also there's space. A company can also donate the use of its facilities. So this is another thing that like, it's not money directly, but it's valuable. So like a hotel could offer up its ballroom to a nonprofit for it to host its annual gala. Or a law firm might offer up its boardroom for like a big meeting or event or whatever that you're having. And on the one hand, the same thing applies that I have been saying about how this is a good way in. Like if they donate their space and you'd like to eventually get money from them, But like if you use their space and you use it well and you use it respectfully and you thank them profusely afterwards, this begins to build the relationship a little bit more. And you could say, thank you so much for your contribution to our organization in letting us use your space for our event last year. And then you can try to leverage that into getting a grant from them as well. But also, space is not free either way. Like if you don't have to go out there and pay for a space in which to hold your event, then that alleviates a lot of pressure on your program's budget in that way. So in some ways it is like receiving money. It just kind of cuts out the middleman, and instead of receiving money to go rent a space somewhere, instead you just got the space. So there is a financial value involved with it as well. So at this point, we've talked about what, like 8 different ways that corporations can support nonprofit organizations. So when we're talking about flexibility and all the options that you have available here, that is what we are talking about. So I hope that kind of is exciting, at least here. Okay. Let me quickly, before I move on to why companies give, let me just check if we have other questions coming in. Okay, I see a question asking me to repeat what I said about finding companies that are giving away product donations. The website is called Good 360. If you look up Good 360, like the number 360, there's a website that you'll be able to go to that helps match nonprofits that are looking for products with companies that have products to give. Okay, let me see here. I see something from someone who's an individual with a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. Okay, well, this is actually well timed. Someone is asking, I'm an individual with a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. Is anything different for me, or can I apply for things just the same as a nonprofit? Okay, this is well timed as we jump into corporate motivations. So with that, let's start talking about corporate motivations, and I will answer that question very early into this section. Okay, so now that we've talked about the ways in which companies give, now let's take a look at why companies give. So unlike traditional foundations and other charitable agencies, corporations do not exist to give money away. Their allegiance instead is to their customers, their shareholders, their employees, and above all, to their bottom line. And as nonprofits, it's important to keep the interests and motivations of a company in mind when we go to them in search of support. It's kind of a different beast than other forms of philanthropy. So here are some of the reasons why companies give to nonprofits that we're going to talk about here. So they give to nonprofits to take advantage of tax deductions, to advance their business objectives, to increase corporate visibility, and to be good corporate citizens. So we are going to take a look at each one of these things individually. As we go through each one, I'm going to pose some questions that you can ask yourself to determine if you're ready to approach corporations for support. Okay, so the first one, taking advantage of tax deductions. Some people think that this is the #1 reason why companies donate to nonprofits, and it's not. It is definitely not the top reason why companies donate to nonprofits, but it is one of the reasons. So it's true to some degree. Companies can deduct up to 10% of their taxable income. So if you are a nonprofit with 501c3 status, companies are able to take a tax deduction for a donation that they make to your organization. So the important question here is, are you a legal nonprofit organization? I'm looking at my friend in the audience who's an individual working through a fiscal sponsor. So in order for companies to take advantage of tax benefits involved in donations, you need to be a legal 501c3 nonprofit organization and be registered with the IRS. So if you are not a legal nonprofit and you'd like more information on becoming a nonprofit, the Candid Learning website does have a ton of resources for you on figuring out, like, how do I become a nonprofit? What are the advantages and disadvantages? What are the alternatives, etc. One of the alternatives to forming a nonprofit organization is getting a fiscal sponsor, which is basically its own nonprofit organization, its own 501c3 organization that you partner up with and you kind of operate under their umbrella, such that any tax deductible donations or grants that you receive technically go to your fiscal sponsor, and then they disperse the funding down to you, with the only catch being that they'll usually take a very small percentage of any money that you take in. So I would say if you were working through a fiscal sponsor, you could conceivably get a corporate sponsorship. But if you were doing this in terms of like tax deductions here, like if you were getting maybe not a sponsorship, but a like corporate contribution, like a grant, for instance, then you would work through your fiscal sponsor in that case. So you would want to give the company your fiscal sponsor's information so that they would be the ones who technically received that information, and then the money would go down to you. Sponsorship, meanwhile, which I misspoke on, that's kind of its own ball of wax, where like sponsorships are oftentimes not necessarily tax deductible because they tend to provide too much benefit to the corporation. So those are often a little more similar to like, I don't know, like an advertising expense in that case. So those are kind of their own ball of wax. Given that I am not I'm not an accountant, I hesitate to give too much information on the tax details of corporate sponsorships, but I swear if you Google it, there's oodles of resources out there on the internet on it. But anyway, while tax benefits are certainly appealing to companies, a tax break is typically not the primary motivation why companies give to nonprofits. But rather, this one right here, to advance their business objectives. This is the overarching motivation behind corporate philanthropy. Altruism may factor in as well, but the underlying question behind corporate philanthropy almost always is, how would supporting this organization be good for business? So what do we mean by good for business? What we mean is that companies are looking for nonprofits who can connect them to current and potential customers, or who address issues of interest to the company. So if you are trying to demonstrate to a company how your nonprofit could help advance its business objectives, here are some initial questions you could ask. You could ask, what audiences or constituents do we share with companies? And this is easier for some nonprofits than others. Like, for example, an environmental protection organization, they might share constituents with a company like REI or North Face or Patagonia that deal with outdoor gear and equipment, things like that. But if you're not sure, like some of the ways that maybe you could tell, you could look at a company's advertisements, you could look at their in-store placement of products, you could look at research, you could look at their website, you could look at what nonprofits are they currently supporting, things like that, and that can give you some hints. You also want to ask yourself, would companies want to connect with our constituents? Are there specific constituent groups of ours with which a company would want to connect? Like I have a slightly outdated example of this. PBS. So they've had like a longtime sponsor that's like Viking River Cruises. And that's because Viking River Cruises did a survey of their current customer base and they asked them a series of questions. One of them being, what TV shows do you watch? And an overwhelming response that they had was Masterpiece Classic, all the shows on PBS. And so in order to target new customers that are similar to their current customers, they began advertising on like Masterpiece Classic on PBS. Also think about, do you address issues of interest to a company? So like, for example, a nonprofit that's working to promote recycling and environmental cleanup might be able to connect with like a waste management company, things like that. Studies have shown that besides price and quality, buyers will choose a product from a company that is viewed as socially responsible. So connecting with a nonprofit for a good cause can help them get that point across. But also, while I'm saying all of this, remember that all of this is not just about the company's good name and reputation, but yours as well. This is the part where corporate giving can get a little bit dicey. So before you seek corporate support, you should give some thought to who do you want to do business with? Because it goes without saying that some corporate partnerships may turn off more donors than they attract. So with this in mind, if your organization does not already have a gift acceptance policy, now is a good time to establish one before you start seeking corporate donations. Otherwise, you might end up in a situation where you have the opportunity to get a lot of money from a company, but it's a company that might alienate a lot of your constituents, and you find yourself kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And a gift acceptance policy is there for those difficult times. It's like a guide for a nonprofit laying down the framework for the types of gifts that an organization will or will not accept. And it helps educate the staff and board about the critical issues that are triggered by certain gifts. So, for example, if your nonprofit's mission has something to do with lung cancer, would you accept a gift from a tobacco company? Probably not. But you can find examples of gift acceptance policies if you take a look again at the Candid Learning website. We've got some good stuff there. Okay, so other motivations that we might want to look at here. Increasing corporate visibility. This is very similar to the previous motivation of advancing business objectives, but it's a little different. Supporting nonprofit causes in a very public manner is one way to draw positive attention to a company. Companies are looking for nonprofits that can raise their visibility by reaching a large audience. And in turn, companies often perceive that associating their corporate name and brand with a nonprofit's good works, and in turn your reputation, is an effective way to attract potential customers. This is sometimes called reflected glory. Your reputation and your visibility reflected back onto the company, which helps raise their profile and make them look good. So if you are interested in kind of helping a company raise its public profile, the questions that you want to ask yourself are, first of all, how visible are you in the community? As in, are you a well-known organization? And what's your reputation? Also, how big of an audience do you have? And like, do you serve the general population or a specific population? And if specific, which specific population and how many people do you serve? These are the kind of questions that companies are going to have for you. They want to know, all right, who is your audience? Where are they? What are their demographics? How old are they? How many people? Are these people who come to your events, visit your website, participate in your programs? How many people are subscribed to your newsletter or visiting your website every month, etc. And so they also want to know, relatedly, like, how would you get their name in front of the public? Like, would you put their logo on your website, put it in media coverage, publications that you put out? have them advertised in community events, advertising. You can also potentially look for companies that are in need of an image boost or a facelift and help them do damage control. So if you see like a company that has been kind of in PR trouble a little bit, you could seize the opportunity to get a fair amount of support for your organization this way. But at the same time, take a look at, okay, if they're having a PR problem, is it the kind of thing that you want to enmesh yourself in? Or is it the kind of thing where if you take money from this company, it's going to make you look bad too? And that is a question that no one can answer except for you and your constituents. So be very careful about this stuff. And that leads us to our final motivation behind corporate giving, which is good corporate citizenship. So what do we mean by good corporate citizens? This basically means being about more than just profits. There's a term called CSR, corporate social responsibility, which means companies want to be seen as socially responsible. And that means contributing to economic development while improving the quality of life for their employees and the community where their customers live and work. Often, corporate leaders are motivated by their desire to give back to the community where they do business. In addition, companies reach out to nonprofits as part of their government and community relations work, developing relationships with community leaders, and taking the lead on important civic issues. And so if you want to appeal to companies based on their corporate citizenship interests, starting with local companies that can see the good work that you're doing is usually the most effective strategy. So some questions you can ask yourself over here are, what companies are in our backyard? Walk out the door of your office and turn around in a slow circle and see, like, what are the companies that are physically, like geographically nearby. And you can also use the foundation directory to search for these companies too. You also want to consider, how do we strive to enhance the local community to make it a more appealing place for people to live and work? So thinking about like, oh, how do you advance things like, oh, education in the community or the arts, or environmental work or affordable housing, whatever it may be. Also think about, how deep is your network of community leaders? So this is your human capital at your organization. So maybe stop to think about your donors, your board members, your volunteers, or anyone associated with your nonprofit in some way. Are there any people in your network that a corporation might want to develop a friendlier relationship with? Or like maybe you're in really tight with your local city council person, and maybe that company wants to get a closer relationship with the local city council person as well, in which case that would be another motivation for them. So you can see there are a variety of motivations that are involved here. So now that we know all of this, okay, now how do we find corporate partners beyond just walking out the door of our office and walking around in a slow circle and seeing what are the companies that are close by? When we think about research and searching for potential corporate partners, we want to look for companies based on what you do, what they do, and where they are located, like their factory, their office, etc. So with this, I'm gonna hop out of the PowerPoint for a sec and jump over to the foundation directory, which is Candid's database of well over 200,000 different funders that you can search for financial support. So some of you may have used this before to look for grants from foundations. And yes, we've got many foundations in here, but you can also use this in a targeted way to find corporate support specifically. So what I'm going to do from the front page of this database here, I am going to click on the advanced search and filters. This is going to open up some more options. And then there's another one that comes up here that says additional filters. Click that too. What we're going to do, we're going to go where it says organization type. And so if we look in this area here, what we're going to do, we're going to click on corporate giving programs. We are also going to look for, under the types of foundations, company-sponsored foundations. So when we do this, we're ensuring that 100% of our results are going to be corporate, both corporate foundations and corporate giving programs. And then we just do the rest of the search however we want, the way we would do any other search, which means put in the subject area that you work in. Like let's say, for instance, let's say we're an environmental organization and where we are located. So let's say, given that COACT Detroit has been hosting this session with us, let's do Michigan. Let's say we're an environmental organization in Michigan looking for corporate support. This right here is sufficient for doing a search. We could also add additional things if we wanted to under transaction type. For instance, we could look for employee matching gifts. We could look for employee volunteer services. We could look for in-kind gifts. So people who had been asking for other ideas here of how to find who will do a product donation, you can put down in-kind gifts if that's the case. But either way, we can run a search and we're going to get corporate results of who has been supporting environmental programs in Michigan here. So we take a look here and we look at our list of grant makers. We have our top 5 here, the ones who've given out the largest number of grants. You can reorder this however you want. Like if you want the biggest funders on top, you could do that if you really wanted to. And you can just click on one, figure out what you want. Let's take a look at Bank of America, for instance. Bank of America is an example of a huge corporation that offers both a foundation and a corporate giving program. And this one right here is their foundation. So you can quickly take a look and see, okay, what are the subject areas that they tend to give in? And here's environment here. It's one of the more modest areas that they give towards, but they still give quite a bit. You can take a look, where does the money go? What are the typical grant sizes? What are the different subject areas that they give towards, etc. Transaction types, you can see Bank of America does have an employee matching gift program and they do volunteers. So that's always really good information to know here. And then you can take a look and figure out, do we fit into any of their program areas? Is it worth our time applying for funding? They direct you towards their website for application information here. They currently have an RFP open right now, or a request for proposals. You can see whether you fit in with that. And because they're a foundation, their tax returns are public information, so you can get all kinds of details about their assets and giving and whatnot. All sorts of things here. And then at the bottom, you have their contact information if you want to reach out to them. I will say the foundation directory is normally a subscription database, but you can use it completely for free at any of our Candid community partners, such as COACT Detroit, for example. But we have well over 350 different partners as part of Candid community around the US and a few international locations as well. And at any of those locations, you can use this database completely free of charge. If you wanted to learn more about the company itself, you can click on Bank of America Corporation, and it'll give you all the different vehicles that they have here. So like if you wanted to take a look at their corporate giving program instead, which is not a foundation, but it still gives out money, then you can bring that up instead and see how that compares and see if you want to reach out to one or the other or both, whichever happens to work best for your purposes. So that's a little bit about how you would use the foundation directory to do this type of work. So with that, I know we are running over time, sadly. If you remember nothing else from this session here, here are some key takeaways. Just always remembering that corporate philanthropy is motivated by companies' bottom line. And so you want to look at your organization from the company's point of view here, but also note that companies support nonprofits in so many different ways. And so with that, it gives you a lot of really great options to explore here. And I know we are over time here. We're running out of time for questions. I see that there are some interesting comments in the chat as well. I see Rachel wrote in regarding in-kind donations that they used to work at a radio station and frequently gave airtime in exchange for being named as a sponsor at events. So that's a good example of how nonprofits could get a little bit of airtime talking about their organization with the exchange of acting as a sponsor. I see Cynthia also writes in about having received laptops and hard drives from State Farm Insurance. They were wiped clean of company information and were great for us. Yeah, I see all kinds of questions here that sadly we're running completely out of time. But I would say if we didn't have time to get to your question today, for one thing, a lot of these questions are easily answered on the Candid Learning website. If you go to learning.candid.org and go to the knowledge base area, we have a ton of resources that will answer a lot of your questions. But also, you can turn to our online librarians. Again, start by going to Candid Learning and go to the Ask Us area, and that will connect you to Candid's online librarians. So they are not bots, they are real human beings who know a lot of things about a lot of things, and you can ask them anything. You can live chat with librarians during normal business hours, and they'll be able to answer your question right there and then. Or if it's not regular business hours, you can send the online librarians an email, and they will get back to you on the next business day. But we have lots and lots of other trainings coming up here. Again, if you check the Candid Learning training calendar, you'll see all types of things coming up in the future. But I would like to thank you all for your time today. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful for you in getting started with corporate giving. So with that, good luck and happy fundraising to you all. I hope you have nothing but outstanding success in all of your corporate philanthropy efforts. Thank you everyone for joining today so much.